I reach the ridge at dusk and stop under the pines to listen. Wind moves through the branches. A dry branch scrapes the roof of the old service road sign. Nothing else. I study the slope below and pick out a concrete lip hidden by ivy and dirt. The lip is square and low to the ground. When I brush it clear with my boot, a line of rust shows along a steel hatch. I work the handle with both hands until it grinds and lifts an inch. Cold air slips up from the dark. I lower my pack through the gap and follow it down the ladder, one rung at a time. The ladder bolts hold. The hatch drops behind me with a dull shot that echoes along a tunnel. I click on a headlamp and hold the light steady against the chalky walls. The entry tunnel is narrow, just wide enough for 2 shoulders. Concrete seams run in straight rows. I move forward with the light low to the floor to catch any wires or nails. Dust jumps in the beam each time my boot sets down. At the end of the tunnel, a round blast door sits on its hinges. The dogs are open. Someone left in a hurry or never closed it at all. I lean my shoulder into the door and it swings with a tired groan. There is a junction room past the door. A vent hums somewhere in the walls, not strong, more like a draft. A faded stencil reads equipment, Gen, fuel with an arrow. I follow it to a small steel door and try the handle. It opens on a room with a drum rack and a portable generator on a dolly. The unit is old but clean. A clipboard with a fuel log hangs on a nail. The last entry is a month and a day with a neat set of initials. I rock the fuel drum, hear the slow wash, and feel the weight. I open the petcock on the generator, sniff for varnish, and get only diesel and cold metal. I check air intake, oil fill, and belt tension, then pull the cord once to loosen it and set the choke. The first pull does nothing. The second coughs and fails. The third catches. The engine settles into a steady run that fills the room with a low drone. Overhead, a single strip light blinks and holds. The glow spills into the hall and brings the bunker into view. A painted line runs down the center of the floor and splits toward living and control. I close the generator door only part way so I can hear any change in the sound. I set my pack in the junction and go methodically. First, exits, the blast door behind me, the ladder under the hatch, and a second stairwell at the far end with a sign that says lower access. I test the lower door. It is locked with a key switch and a steel bar across it. The bar is hand-cut and pinned with bolts. I leave it. Second, water, a galvanized sink off the living area and a pair of filters plumbed to a pressure tank. I run the tap. It coughs air and then a thin line of brown water that clears to a pale stream. Not much pressure. It will do. Third, air. Vents draw slowly and carry the smell of dust and old paint. Nothing sharp. I move through the living area. The place is small and organized. A metal table with 4 chairs. 2 bunks with gray blankets folded tight over thin mattresses. A jacket hangs on a hook by a cot where someone left a rolled pair of socks. A half-eaten ration bar sits on a plate, dry and hard, with crumbs spread in a circle, as if a hand stopped mid-bite. I check the plate with the back of my fingers. It is room temperature. That tells me nothing in a bunker. Still, I mark it in my head. I find a storage locker with canned food, a few MREs, and a crate of candles. A box holds batteries in mixed sizes, each wrapped in tape with dates written in black marker. A tool chest under the table has pliers, a hacksaw with a spare blade, and a set of keys. The keys are tagged with numbers that match doors. I pocket them and make a quick map on the back of an old inventory sheet. I draw the main hall, the generator room, the bunks, the control room, and the lower access. Each corner gets a note for sound traps and sight lines. Control sits behind a glass window dark with dust. I wipe a clear patch and look in. Racks of equipment line 2 walls. A single radio set rests on a desk with a microphone on a coiled cord. A battery charger blinks a slow red pulse. I unlock the door, step in, and hit the main switch. Lamps on the racks turn amber and then green where they still work. The radio gains a low hiss. I tune through the band by feel and pause when a human voice cracks and vanishes. I go back a quarter turn, and there it is again. Words on top of static, then gone. I mark the frequency with a strip of tape and decide not to chase it yet. I tell myself one night, in at dusk, out at first light. Then I can move through the forest without drawing attention. I set out 2 cans on a wire between the bunks and the hall. I hang a ring of keys from a nail on the lower access door so metal will tap metal if it moves. I wedge the blast door with a wrench so it cannot swing shut without effort. I check my watch and say the time out loud for my own record. I do not want to lose track in a place with no sky. Once the practical work is done, the rest arrives. Sound moves in a bunker. A tiny scrape becomes a message. I hear faint tapping through the vents, spaced with a rhythm that points to wind or water at first. Then it repeats with a pattern that suggests a human hand. I hold my breath without meaning to and then let the air out slowly. Not because of fear, but to keep the room quiet. I place a chair under the vent and stand on it. The grate is held by 4 screws with heads worn smooth. I press my ear close. Metal and air. Nothing else. I step down and put the chair back exactly where I found it. I heat water on a small propane burner from my pack and pour it over coarse grounds in a cup. The smell settles the room into something normal. I sip, then set the cup down and let it cool. I write short notes on the back of the inventory sheet, as if I am auditing. Air good, water slow, power stable, unknown movement in vents, living space intact, evidence of recent use, no visible mold, no pests, radioactive. Keeping it factual helps cut noise in my head. I rotate the map to match the hall and time my steps so I know how long it takes to move from bunk to control at a quick pace. The radio flickers again. I move into the control room and sit, careful not to bump a loose cable. The voice is back, single words through a curtain of static. I catch shelter, supplies, and what sounds like, do not descend. Then the loop resets and repeats in the same cold tone as a weather station. The signal is not live. It is a recording feeding a transmitter somewhere else. I write down the frequency and the sequence. If I pick up anything stronger, I want to know if this station changes. I take a slow walk through each space and then kill the overhead lights in the living area, leaving only a small lamp on the table turned toward the wall. The glow is soft. It will hide any sudden movement in shadow without starving my eyes. I ease onto the lower bunk and rest my boots on the floor. I do not close my eyes yet. I watch the door hinges and the key ring on the lower access bar. No draft. No sway. 10 minutes pass before my shoulders settle. Another 10 before the room becomes a shape I know. The cans rattle. I sit up and catch them with my hand to stop the sound. The wire is still taut, which means the movement came from the hall, not the bunks. I slide off the mattress and pick up my light. I keep the beam low and press along the wall until I reach the junction. The air here is cooler. The blast door wedge is still in place. I tilt my head toward the vent. There it is again. A mild contact. Pause, mild contact. I picture a branch moving in wind and realize there is no wind in a buried vent. I move to the control room, flip on the desk lamp, and wait. A soft click sounds from the intercom panel. I had not noticed that the board is still powered. A red light comes on next to the label, lower. I push the talk button and say, "Hello, who is there?" My voice level and clear. I take my finger off the button and listen. Only the fan behind the rack. I press again and repeat myself. No answer. I mark the time and the label in my notes. I do not press the button a third time. The generator tone shifts. I smell a faint change in the air, not smoke, more like warm metal and exhaust finding a path. I go to the generator room and open the door fully. The engine still runs steady, but the temperature feels higher. I pull the intake screen and brush off a pad of lint with my gloved hand. The note on the clipboard mentions checking this screen each night. I place the pad in a metal tray and leave the door open an inch to avoid heat buildup. Back in the living area, I sit and eat half an MRE with careful bites. I close the meal and seal it in a bag so no scent lingers. I drink from a bottle and pour the rest into the sink to test the drain. It runs slow but clears. For hand washing, I use a small amount of soap and a cloth and dry my hands on a towel that smells of storage. Every movement slows me down to an even line. There is work, there is rest, there is watch. The map on the control wall draws me in. It is a county map with grid lines and pencil marks. 4 circles cover points to the east, each marked with 3-letter codes. The last date near the bottom corner matches the fuel log. Under the map, a spiral notebook sits open to a page that reads, "Ventilation anomalies after rain. Avoid lower corridor." There are more entries in a tight hand, but the note is the one the eye cannot ignore. I trace the route to the lower door and decide not to test it. Sleep does not arrive on command. I do not chase it. I alternate between short rests on the bunk and short rounds through the rooms, each time checking the cans, the keyring, and the wedge. Twice I think I see a shadow move on the far wall while I pass the control window. Both times it is my reflection. By midnight, the storm on the surface pushes a slow drip through some unseen path above the ceiling. A drop lands every few seconds on the concrete floor of the entry tunnel. The sound is steady, and the bunker answers with its own tick from the heating of the pipes. When I wake on the bunk from a brief drift, the room is quieter. It takes a second to mark the change. The generator is still running, but the tone has flattened. Fuel is low. I move for the drum and work the hand pump with practiced strokes until the gauge on the unit rises. While I pump, a faint flicker moves behind the small window of the generator door. I lean close. It is only the reflection of the lamp moving with my arm. I tell myself to slow the pump and count each stroke. I stop at 20 and replace the cap. The engine returns to its old note. I check the radio again. The loop has not changed. I widen the search. A hum rides the band for a full turn of the dial. Then a new voice arrives, this one clear and human and live. A man speaks 2 sentences that could be names or call signs. He asks for acknowledgement. His tone is direct, but not urgent. I key the mic and answer with the frequency, and my location described only as shelter. Silence follows. He repeats his call. I answer again and add the word temporary. The signal weakens, and he fades beneath a line of static. I do not waste power chasing him with the gain up. I make a mark and turn the set down to a bare whisper. I allow myself 10 minutes with my eyes closed. When I open them, the lamps flicker as the generator fights a brief surge. The cans on the wire sway. I stare at them until they stop. That means air moved or mass moved. I stand and wait for a second swing. Nothing. I pick up the light and move to the lower access door. The keys hang exactly as I left them. Dust along the floor shows the path of my boots and no others. The bar holds. I kneel, press my face near the gap where the door meets the floor and shine the light into the seam. The beam dies into black. I breathe through my mouth, then stand slowly so the joints do not complain, and walk away. I decide to sweep the vents. In the control room, a small step stool stands by a cabinet. I carry it to the living area and set it under the nearest vent. The screws hold firm. I test each with the screwdriver from the tool chest. One moves. Two are frozen. I give the stuck ones a touch of oil and wait. While I wait, I look over the room as if I am new again. The cup on the table leaves a pale ring that was not there before. I wipe it clean and feel better for the order. When I return to the screws, the oil has done enough. The grate comes away in my hand. The duct beyond is narrow, a square just large enough for an arm. Dust clings to the inner walls. I run the light down the run and see only 80 inches of metal and then a bend. No traps, no nests, no tools. I replace the grate and move the stool to the control room vent, then the junction vent, and finally the generator room vent. The last one has a cracked corner where the screw never bit in. The gap would fit a hand. That explains movement of air near the cans. I cut a rectangle of thin sheet from a bent utility cover and tape it over the gap with high-temp tape from the tool chest. The room steadies. The lower access intercom light turns on again. I press the button but say nothing. The line hisses and then goes still. I press again and speak my name. I state that I will not open the lower door and that I am only passing through for one night. I say that I can leave food at the top of the stair if a person needs it. The lamp stays red for 3 breaths and then goes dark. I put the mic down and hold my hands flat on the desk to stop them from doing useless work. I gather a small bag of supplies, a can of beans, a plastic fork, a wrapped energy bar, and a bottle of water. I set it by the lower door and tape a note that says it is for whoever is there. I sign only with the first letter of my name. The act has weight even if no one reads it. It clears a debt I do not want to carry out into the woods. When I turn away from the door, the radio hum in the control room bumps and then smooths out. The loop repeats. The name on the loop means nothing to me. Hours pass in small units. I clean. I check battery levels. I set the charger to trickle for my headlamp. I move a cot closer to the wall so I can reach the table without standing. I stretch my back and feel the line release. I start to think of the bunker as a set of manageable tasks instead of a single unknown thing. That is the only way to use a place like this without letting it use me. I unroll my sleeping bag on the lower bunk and lie on top with my boots off and my socks still on. Something taps the hatch above the ladder. 1 tap, then 2. Not the storm. The storm does not tap in that way. I move to the ladder and look up. The hatch has no interior handle except the one I use to pull it down. If someone stood at ground level and tested it, I would hear the sound I just heard. I hold my light off and wait for the next tap. It comes after a long pause. I lift my chin and taste dust and metal. I back away from the ladder and pick up the wrench from the blast door wedge. I do not go up. I return to the control room and watch the band. The tapping above stops. Outside, a new sound begins. Rain, steady now, marching along the ceiling in many small notes. The bunker tightens and settles around me, and the smell of wet earth pushes down through the vents. The drip in the entry tunnel doubles its pace. I place a pan under it to capture the water and move on. I do not want to fix the drip. The sound is a metronome for the hours. The intercom crackles again, and a voice arrives, clear and close. It is a woman. She says, "Leave the food, do not come down." Her tone is hoarse but controlled. I step forward before I catch myself, and then stop with both feet set on the floor. I answer that I will leave the food. I ask if she is alone. No reply comes. The red lamp goes dark. I pick up the bag and set it on the top step of the lower stair, then move back 3 paces and wait, as if I am in a hospital hallway where someone sleeps. A shadow moves at the bottom of the stairs, quick and low. A hand reaches up, and the bag slides away. The hand is thin and pale with a strip of cloth wrapped around the wrist. It disappears, and a bolt scrapes below, then nothing. I stand until the silence runs too long. Then I move back to the living area, close the door to the stairwell, and sit on the bunk with my hands on my knees. I picture the woman counting the items in the bag with care. I hope she has a lighter. I placed one in the side pocket when I packed the bag, but did not list it in the note. The generator falters at 2 a.m. The light over the table dims and swells. I step into the engine room and see a small circle of clean metal under the fuel line where a leak has washed the dust. I tighten the clamp with the screwdriver, then wipe the line and watch for a new bead. None forms. The engine runs smoother. I log the action on the clipboard and add a note to check the clamp again at dawn if I am still here at dawn. When I return to the living room, the jacket on the hook is gone. I scan the floor and the bunks. The jacket is not here. I replay the last 10 minutes and confirm I did not move it. My trap wire is in place. The cans did not sound. I walk the hall. The jacket lies folded on the chair in the control room. I did not place it there. The hair at the back of my neck tries to rise, and I tell it to sit still by giving my hands a task. I take the jacket back to the hook and hang it with the zipper facing right, then move to the intercom and press the button. I say thank you for leaving the jacket. I say I will be gone at first light. No answer. I decide to stay awake until sunrise. Sleep is not worth the cost now. I run the radio low and open a manual to keep my mind steady. The manual covers the air system. It shows a diagram with lines that match what I saw behind the grates. One note in the margin points to a backflow damper and says, "Sticks in rain, free by hand from crawl space." I mark the crawl space entry on my map. It is near the lower stair. Of course, it is near the lower stair. I set up simple alarms. I balance 3 socket wrenches on the edge of the control desk so they will fall if brushed. I lean a broom against the living room door so the smallest push will send it down. I tape a line of loose paper along the floor near the lower door to record any wind shift and any small step. Then I boil water and pour it over tea. The cup warms my hands. The bitter taste resets the mouth after too many hours of canned food and diesel. I let the steam rise and watch how it curls up and vanishes in the dry air. The radio man returns near 3. His signal is weak but real. He calls for anyone in the valley shelters to conserve fuel and avoid surface travel until the storm passes. He warns of movement along the service road. He does not say numbers. He does not say distances. He uses plain language and repeats it once. I answer with a single click on the mic, then another, then stop. Too much talk draws attention, and no one is coming to fetch strangers from holes in the ground tonight. I take out a small notebook and write a letter to my sister. I do not write about danger. I write about the smell of rain and old concrete, and how the first light looks when it hits dust in a room with no windows. I write that I will head north when the weather clears and avoid the highway. After 2 pages, I fold the paper and slide it into a plastic sleeve. If I do not make it out, it will sit with the map where someone might find it and understand that this was a place used by a person who cared for order more than noise. A soft scrape, then a bump, comes from the crawlspace panel near the lower stair. The panel is held by 2 wing nuts. I step close and kneel. The sound does not come again. I lay my palm flat on the panel and feel the cold of the concrete through the metal. I tell the person behind it that there is a flashlight on the table if she needs it, and that I will slide it halfway under the door. I set the light on the floor and push it until the lens is under the gap. It disappears. I stand and walk back without waiting for a word. Minutes later, the vent above the living area breathes differently, and the room feels easier. The backflow damper is now free. I note the change in my book and raise the generator door to give it more air. I listen for the sound of the light being set back down near the panel. It does not come. I do not need it while the overheads are on, so I let it go and trust that if it returns, I will find it in some silent, careful way the same as the jacket. Around 4, the storm reaches its full run. The hatch rattles on its seat. Water hammers somewhere above the lower corridor. The intercom glows red and then dies in the same breath, as if a hand found the button and moved on. I hold my ground. The broom by the door falls with a sharp clack, and I move toward it with my shoulders square. The door has shifted under a new draft. I push it tight and reset the broom. Something taps behind it from inside the room. I open it a hand's width and see my face in the control room glass. I close it again and stand until the quiet returns. The first hint of dawn in a bunker is not light. It is temperature and sound. The air thins. The storm drains its last energy and leaves a low drip behind. The generator's tone feels rounder when the pressure drops. I do not wait for full day. I pack what I unpacked, leave 2 cans on the table for whoever follows, and shoulder my bag. Before I go, I write a short, clean list and tape it to the wall. Fuel line clamp, damper sticks after rain, leave food for the lower stair, do not descend. It is not advice. It is record. I climb the ladder to the hatch and set my hands on the bar. The hatch rises with a damp pull. Cold air hits my face and the smell of wet pine fills my head. I hold the hatch with a length of pipe I jammed into a crack to keep it open. I haul my bag onto the rim and place it on the ground above. I squeeze through and put one knee on the surface and pause. The forest is a flat gray under the morning cloud. Water drops from every branch. The service road is a darker stripe through the trees. I hear no steps. I hear no voices. Something moves at the edge of the road. A figure stands with its back to me and tilts its head toward the air. It turns slowly and sways in place. Its clothes are soaked and torn. The skin on the face is pale and slack. The eyes do not track like a healthy person's eyes. It lifts an arm. I lower the hatch just a notch so the sound does not carry and slide back down the ladder. I let the hatch rest on its seat, but do not lock it. I return to the living area and take the radio mic in my hand. I keep my voice low and steady. I state that the surface is not clear and that I will hold. I set the generator for another hour by topping the line and checking the clamp again. I lay a new can by the lower door and write a single word on the note. More. I eat a small breakfast and drink water until the tension in my shoulders eases. The figure outside will drift when the rain turns cold enough. It will seek sound. There is none here to draw it unless I make it. I slide into work again. Work is the spine of the day. By mid-morning, the radio carries a new message. A woman reads a list of safe wells by grid. She tells anyone within range to avoid a bridge to the south due to a partial collapse. Her voice is clear and measured. She says a team will sweep the valley shelters in 2 days if fuel allows. I press the mic and click twice, then stop. I do not add my name. Names are for tables and sunlight. Here, function is enough. A soft knock comes at the lower door. Just 2 knuckles, barely there. I go to the intercom and press the button. I say that more food is on the step. I ask if she needs water. This time a whisper comes back. Water. I fill a bottle and set it down. The hand appears again, pulls it, and vanishes. I ask if she is alone. A pause. Yes. I ask if she will be safe if I leave now. A longer pause. Wait until noon. The lamp dies. I check my watch and nod to no one in particular. Noon it is. While I wait, I inventory the rest of the supplies and write a count on a card so I do not repeat this if I have to come back. I move the remaining batteries to one shelf and mark the dates that still look good. I find a roll of wire and string a second set of cans near the entry hall as a trip line for sound. I move my bedroll back into my pack and sweep the floor with the broom. Not because it needs it for health, but because living in a clean line helps keep decisions clean. Near 11, a thud runs through the lower stair, heavy and blunt, followed by a scrape that goes on too long. I press my ear to the door. The sound repeats. It is not the woman. It is the thing that finds bad places when food and noise meet. The intercom lamp jumps on and off as if a palm hits it by accident. I whisper into the button and ask if she is safe. No answer. The scrape turns into a rattle. I set my shoulder to the bar and hold as if I am only another piece of metal in a room full of metal. The rattle stops. The bunker breathes again. At noon, the forest above takes on a higher sound. The storm has passed. Wind moves wet needles. I climb the ladder and lift the hatch with care. The road is empty. The figure is gone. Tracks in the mud run along the ditch line and disappear into brush. I slide the hatch open fully and secure it with the pipe. I do not like leaving the door open, but I do not want to fight it on the way out. I lower my bag and step up until my head is above ground. I pause and listen to the forest. Birdsong is thin but present. That is a good sign. I climb out and shoulder my bag. I wait with one hand on the hatch. I look down into the tunnel and speak in a clear voice. I tell the woman I am leaving the generator with a half drum of fuel and a list on the wall. I tell her about the damper and the clamp and the loop on the radio. I say there is food under the leftmost shelf and that the back corner of the control room has a panel that sticks if the air dries out too much. I tell her I am leaving the jacket. I get no answer. That is fine. Not every action needs a witness. I pull the hatch closed until it rests but does not latch. I slide a flat rock under the lip to hold a thin gap for air. If she needs to move up fast, this will spare her a stuck seal. If an animal tries to pry it, the weight will hold. The forest watches me do this small work and gives me nothing back. I set off down the service road at a slow, controlled pace, eyes on the edges, ears tuned for broken brush and the high, dry click of stone on shoe. I make it 100 yards before I stop. The idea of a locked door and a crawl space and a person who speaks only when needed pulls me back. I turn and stand with my hands on my hips and debate the cost of another hour in a good shelter against the cost of a late start and the open road. Then the radio in my bag clicks once and a voice says, "North Ridge clear to mile marker 4," and the choice makes itself. I keep north. As I walk, I speak my notes into a small recorder because a voice in an empty world draws a line between thought and air. I describe the entrance, the ladder, the blast door, the generator brand and its condition, the clamp that worked loose, the triple checks on the vent screws, the homemade patch, the food counts, the radio loop, the human voice, the contact at the lower door, the water flow, the pressure tank, and the simple list I left behind. I say that fear is useful only when it becomes a task. I say that patience keeps a man alive longer than speed. I say that I will return if I have to cross this ridge again, but I hope I do not. The road curves around a bend and opens to a small turnout where a Forest Service truck sits half sunk into mud and grass. The doors are locked. The windshield holds a sun-faded map under the wiper. I check the bed and find a length of towing strap and a can of tar for roof patches. I leave the tar and take the strap. A flock of small birds lifts from the brush when I close the tailgate. The sound is light and clean. The world is not silent yet. I walk until the trees thin and a low valley spreads to the right. I drop to a knee and check the ground. 2 sets of tracks cross the road here. One is mine from last night when I cut in from the slope. The other is wider and newer, pointed toward the bunker. The stride is uneven, heavier steps where the foot drags. Not the woman from the stairs. I do not follow them back. I have done my part for that place. I press on. A bridge of corrugated steel spans a small creek ahead. Water runs clear over stones. I kneel, wet a cloth, and wipe my face, then fill a bottle and treat it with drops from a small brown vial. While I wait for the contact time, I study the tree line on the far bank. A shape stands near a dead pine with one arm through a torn sleeve. It does not move. I say hello in a normal tone. No answer. I toss a pebble near its feet. No response. I stand and circle left to keep distance and pass without breaking sight. The shape is only a jacket hung on a branch, caught by wind, dried into a human suggestion by the day's heat. The world plays these tricks. That is how nerves work after long weeks on edge. I do not indulge them. I keep moving. By late afternoon, the clouds break and light comes through in long, flat blades across the valley. The radio voice returns and lists supplies needed at a community 2 days north. He asks for bandages, filter elements, and any battery packs that still take charge. He says to leave them at the mile 10 marker in a metal locker on the east side. He thanks anyone who can help. Gratitude feels rare and right. I put my hand on the pack where the batteries sit and do the math on what I can spare without losing safety. I decide to leave 2 if I reach that marker. I stop once more on a ridge and look back. The tree line hides the bunker without effort. My map shows a small square on a blank space, and that is all it should be for anyone who did not feel the walls or hear the voice on the intercom. I hope the woman in the crawl space waits out the next storm and finds a way to move on, or else makes that place truly hers with the same discipline that keeps rooms and minds clear. I hope she never has to open the lower door again. I wrote not to descend, because a line like that turns into a rule if a person repeats it enough times to herself. When I camp that night under a rock outcrop, I do it without a fire. I lay my bedroll, eat a handful of dried fruit, and drink from the bottle I filled at the creek. The sky is a dull gray, not quite clear, but far from yesterday's iron lid. I set the radio near my head and let it carry the low hum of the world. When the man on the band says the word shelter again, I picture the concrete room, the map, the list on the wall, the jacket on the hook, and the lower stair. I understand why people stay in bunkers too long. A solid roof is a promise. A promise can turn into a trap. The only answer I know is to keep moving and keep records and treat each safe night as work completed, not a life earned. I end the day with a plan for the next 8 miles and a simple set of goals. Avoid open ground where the valley bends south. Cross at the low rock ford near the old culvert. Check the mile 10 locker if I reach it before dark. Sleep on high ground with clean exit paths. Write the events of the day in 4 lines before sleep. Leave no smell and no light. In the morning, stand, fold, and go. The bunker is behind me, but the method is not. The method is the only shelter that fits in a pack. Morning arrives in thin gold along the edges of the rock. I sit up, fold the blanket, and pack without pause. I check the radio once more before I go, and catch a final message from the valley. A sweep planned for tomorrow, fuel depending. I press the mic and say, in a clear voice, that a lower corridor door is barred and should remain so, that a person lives in the crawl space and needs water and patience, and that the generator line clamp needs watching. I speak as if I am the person who will hear this tomorrow with no context, because that is who I am most days. A man who arrives at a problem with only the notes of the last man to guide him. I let the button up and move. By noon, I reach the mile 10 marker and find the metal locker on the east side of the road. I open it with a stiff handle and place 2 charged battery packs inside, along with a short letter. Bunker on Ridge West holds supplies. Do not descend lower access. A woman is there. Leave water at top stair. Treat air damper after rain. Fuel clamp on generator can loosen. Be tidy. Leave it better. I close the locker and brush dirt over my tracks out of habit. This is as close to a service as I can offer in a world without forms or stamps. I do not know where the woman came from or where she will go. I do not know who put the map on the control wall or who wrote the neat fuel log. I know the sound a loose clamp makes and the way a jacket on a hook can keep a room human. I know that fear has value when it requests a task and becomes small under the weight of action. I know that the world still answers in birds and rain and the low thrum of an engine that just needs a clean screen and a quarter turn on a screw. And I know that if I pass this ridge again, I will leave a can on the table and a note on the wall, because that is how small places stay alive long enough to help the next person through. I head north with an even step and a clear list, and the forest opens in front of me just enough to suggest a way forward, not in promise, but in simple shape. I accept that shape and follow it until the next shelter, the next door, the next map on the wall. Each place teaches a small lesson. Each lesson is worth the weight of the page that carries it. I turn the page and keep going.